The Trump administration is desperate to have absolute control over what people and nonprofits can do and say, but pesky laws keep getting in their way.
Good morning and welcome to another DOGE subcommittee hearing where we will highlight more abuses of your tax dollars. The left has funneled hundreds of billions of federal tax dollars through non-governmental organizations, NGOs, to push destructive policies and line the pockets of their friends and allies. This NGO scheme demonstrates massive waste and abuse of federal resources. Today's hearing will bring transparency for the American people. We will expose the corrupt ties that bind left-wing NGOs, Democrat elected officials, Democrat political appointees, and the deep state bureaucrats who write grants and contracts. Corrupt backdoor deal-making has exploited the taxpayer purse to achieve policy ends opposed by the very Americans forced to fund them. Whether by pushing green energy scams or facilitating the resettlement of millions of illegal aliens into American towns and cities, the alliance between big government and allied NGOs has been highly effective and has been flying under the public's radar for far too long. But today, we are going to draw back the curtain. The scheme works in a cycle, as shown here. Democrat administration officials work with leftist NGOs to implement programs in a manner that ensures those NGOs receive massive grants and contracts. The leaders of those recipient groups then turn around and donate to Democrat political campaigns. This intricate web of connections is how elected and appointed Democrat officials and allied NGOs work together. Federal agencies fund the NGOs, and the NGOs shape the agency's behavior. It can be hard to tell where the government ends and the NGO begins. The nonprofits essentially serve as an arm of the government. To put it another way, if the permanent bureaucracy is the de facto fourth branch of the government, then these leftist NGOs are the fifth. Our witnesses today will describe how the left has funneled hundreds of billions of U.S. tax dollars through NGOs, discuss the destructive policies this has enabled, and detail the damage done to our country.
And I want to welcome back some of our guests here today. Mr. Krikorian, I recognize you from last summer when you came to testify. Welcome back. Just want to clarify, you served on the board for Project 2025, is that correct?
I don't think I was on a board. We were one of the advisors for it, but yes.
So yes, you served in an advisory role on Project 2025. I appreciate that. And Mr. Walter, I just want to clarify a few things about Capital Research Center. This is the organization that acted as a fiscal sponsor for Ginny Thomas's nonprofit, correct?
For a project that she was one of many people involved with, yes.
Yes, and this is Ginny Thomas, Justice Clarence Thomas's wife. And my understanding is that there was a donor-advised fund that was the primary donor to that funding under your fiscal sponsorship. In fact, it looks like about $400,000 was channeled through your organization. And if I'm correct, based on what I see here, the primary donors are the Koch brothers, the Searles, the Mercers, and Leonard Leo. And some of you may recall Leonard Leo because, of course, he's at the center of many of the big issues around Supreme Court ethics, but also you all may recognize him because last week Donald Trump called him a sleazebag who probably hates America for his interference in the judiciary and his efforts to try to undermine what Donald Trump is trying to do. So a very interesting cast of characters indeed. And Mr. Turner, as I understand it, you're a former employee of the Koch Institute, correctly?
Yes.
All right. So I think, these are always very interesting hearings we have in the Oversight Committee. We have some retreads of some witnesses who've been here before, all of which are participants in organizations that were involved in Project 2025 that are funded through the same dark money networks and organizations of the Koch brothers and Leonard Leo and the Searles and the Mercers who fund all this stuff, Project 2025, the stuff that's happening in front of the Supreme Court, rolling back our rights, that help to get over 70 Project 2025 authors placed in the administration acting in high-level roles right now that are bringing cases in front of the Supreme Court, undermining our democracy, and which are attacking organizations who are working on civil society programs. So I think I already said this, but I think it's very clear what is going on here. And I want to point out that the project that Ms. Jenny Thomas was fundraising for through Capital Research Center, let's see, what was the direct quote? Literally was formed with the mission to attack the left, a culture war, to wage a culture war against the left. So I think we can see what's going on here. But this is not a joke, right? Ms. Yentl, you're here in your role of helping to advise nonprofit organizations and provide institutional infrastructure. I know there's been a number of untrue things said here today, both about your own professional background, as well as the affiliated organizations that help to support our small nonprofits across the country. But I think it is really important, and this is a message we want to drive home today, that the attacks on nonprofit organizations that the Trump administration is undertaking, including trying to find executive authority to take away tax-exempt status, are both illegal and immoral. Would you agree?
Excuse me. Thank you for the question. Yes, it is illegal for the president or any member of the executive office to direct the IRS to make any changes to the tax status of an individual or an organization. And in fact, the law makes clear that if the president threatens to revoke tax-exempt status from an individual organization, they can be convicted up to 5 years in prison.
And so could you please tell us, we want to make sure that for any nonprofit watching, because I know there are probably hundreds, if not thousands across the country, because they're deeply concerned of what might be coming, what should nonprofits be doing to prepare if DOJ or the administration tries to either infiltrate or take away their status?
Well, nonprofits should know that that's illegal, and they do. That's part of what we've been working to educate nonprofits. But mostly what nonprofits should continue to do is the incredibly important, vital work that they do in communities, and to try not to be distracted by threats and unlawful actions by the president. Nonprofit organizations are local, they are transparent, accountable, they are nonpartisan, and they do vital work in communities, with communities, identifying and prioritizing local needs, and then working with the communities to meet those needs in ways that the government and other private entities don't.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
Marjorie Taylor Greene loves banging her gavel and making a scene, but if these donkey hearings are showing us anything, it's that she either has no knowledge or no respect for the law or the Constitution. The Republican Party is racing to do as much damage as possible, as quickly as possible, fully aware that their agenda will be wildly unpopular once the cuts start stripping the protections people rely on to survive. At the end of the day, this isn't about governance or accountability, it's performance for the cameras and punishment for anyone who gets in their way, and they're betting we won't notice until it's too late.